In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Hello, viewers. We're so glad that you've joined us tonight for our conversation about the beauty of giving it all we've got. A case study of the Two-Mite widow. Before we get rolling, I just need to catch up on a little bit of news. It's been a while since I've been with my girls. Lauren, what's up?
Life is crazy, as it always is, but we started back to school now. It's September, and so we're rocking and rolling with schoolwork and the kids' activities, and I'm playing chauffeur for a little while longer here, but the daughter's doing driver's ed, so hopefully we'll have another driver in the house soon enough.
Get the seatbelt on, girl.
If we make it, yes, if we make it through.
Oh, man, white knuckles all around. Colleen, how about you?
I have had a really busy day. We had one of the men that was an elder of our congregation for years died at age 91. So they had the funeral for him today. And then I had a Bible study, a personal Bible study with another couple. And now I'm here and I'm ready to go.
All right. You're always ready to go, Colleen. I always appreciate that about you. And Dana, never a dull moment for Dana Burke, I'm sure.
Well, we just recently got back from Texas. We spent 2 weeks down there. It was my mother-in-law's 90th birthday that we got to celebrate, and all of our children and all of our grandchildren got to go. So it was really like family reunion. We saw relatives we haven't seen in literally 40 years. So it was a really cool time. But I'm so glad to be home and back in my bed.
I bet. So I'm, as you can see, recording from the Oregon coast. This is my backdrop for the Oregon coast. Mark and I have been hiking pretty much every night for at least an hour, maybe two, and working. I'm hoping by the end of this year to have my book 100 Churches on audio. So that's available now in podcasts. So every entry, there's going to be 100 entries because the name of the book is 100 Churches. I have completed 28 entries, and so I'm aiming to be done with that before 2026, and that's what's going on in my world. So glad to be with you again. So let's dig in. Then let's go through our text first of this very inspiring story about this Two-Mite widow, as she's often called. So I'm just going to read the two of the four gospels mention her. So I'm just going to walk quickly through those verses, and I'm excited to hear you guys' thoughts on some conversation questions that we're going to explore here. So the first, I'll read Mark 12, 41 through 42. There it says, and Jesus sat down opposite the treasury and began watching how the people were putting in money into the treasury, and many rich people were putting in large amounts. And a poor widow came and put in 2 coins, which amount to a quadrans. Calling his disciples to him, he said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the contributors to the treasury, for they all put in out of their surplus, but she out of her poverty put in all that she owned, all that she had to live on, unquote. So each of the gospels kind of put things in a slightly different way. So that's why we like to explore the parallel verses of these kinds of stories. So we'll look at Luke, the physician's, how he worded this event in Luke 21, 1 through 4. There, by the inspiration of God, Luke writes, now he looked up and saw the wealthy putting their gifts into the temple treasury, and he saw a poor widow putting in 2 lepta coins. And he said, truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all of them, for they all contributed to the offering from their surplus, but she from her poverty put in all that she had to live on, unquote. All right, ladies, so tonight, here's what we're going to talk about first. What do you find most rare and beautiful in the life of this widow. Dana, would you start us off on this? What were your thoughts?
Well, I think the first thing that always stands out to me is that she felt, even in her condition, she felt a need to give to God.
No.
And I think sometimes we excuse ourselves by thinking, I don't have that much. There are other people that have more than me, so I'm not going to give, or I'm going to give very little. And this woman, she didn't look at it that way. She had very little, but she gave what she had. And I think that's a huge lesson for all of us, that we need to feel that need, no matter what our circumstances are. God wants us all to make a sacrifice. And I think that's the big thing I get from this is God expects each and every one of us to sacrifice. And you'll remember in the Old Testament, the Levites, even though the priests were given the tithe to live on, but even they had to give a tenth of that tithe. No one was excused from the tithe. Yeah.
Brilliant. I had not thought about that, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because I feel like if I was to fall into anything, Dana, I think that would be it. I would think, oh, that's for the people that have the extra. I have almost nothing. This is not my work. I totally could fall into that. So thank you. Thank you for that. What are your thoughts, Colleen?
Well, in Bible times, being a widow was a scourge. It was, I mean, it's never a great thing for anybody, but at this time, the economy was set up really to where women could almost not earn money, or not much. It was all about men earning the money. So if you lost your husband, that was one of the worst things. Probably the only thing worse would be if you didn't have children. So they had lost, and a widow would have lost her wealth, her protection, and her status. And so this woman had to be feeling the pinch. We don't know how old she was. She could have been a young widow.
Oh, yeah.
Been old. People always think, oh, she was old, but not necessarily. Yeah.
Yep.
So she had to be feeling the pinch. Her tomorrows looked very bleak indeed when she thought about, well, what am I going to do tomorrow and next month? But she rose above all of that and did what she could do for today.
She sure did. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Lauren?
Well, especially in Luke, I like to look at the context that Luke puts a story into.
Okay.
Because we get used to reading chunk our way through the Bible and not looking at the bigger picture. And so I took a look at in both of the Gospels, it's the same context. Jesus is talking in different situations and different scenarios about looking at appearances versus paying attention to what's really going on. And so he's talking about the authority that he has, despite looking like a illegitimate carpenter's son from nowhere.
Yes.
He teaches like the Son of God, because he is truly the Son of God, even if he doesn't look that way. And he talks about watch out for the leadership of the temple, because they're not doing it right. And then he flips that script on its head and says, watch what this woman is doing. And to kind of piggyback off of what Colleen and Dana both have said, she is showing unquestioning reliance on God.
Yes.
She has no promise. I mean, Jesus says she has put in everything that she has to live on, which means she doesn't have a retirement account. She doesn't have a 401k waiting for her that's going to take care of tomorrow. She puts what she needs to into the treasury and says, God will figure it out. God will take care of me. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to do what I need to do and let God sort out the details of what tomorrow looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. She knows that God sees all. And that she knows that he rewards those who diligently seek him. But even though, that's not going to be written down, that's not going to be penned in Hebrews 11:6 until later. But she would have been familiar with passages like Proverbs 13:5. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on evil and the good. And she maybe would have known about Job 28:4, that reminds us of the comforting fact, for he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. So it's such an act of faith that it had to be rooted in the fact that she knows that God sees all, that she knows that God knows that that is her last little bit of funds. I'm also super impressed that she's free from worry to some degree here. I mean, just based on her behaviors, her heart is at peace knowing that even in her dire situation, her well-being is in the hands of a merciful God rather than her own skills or like her brain power. Like, how am I going to stretch this? Her attitude reminds me a little bit of Queen Esther's conviction, kind of like, if I perish, right? She knows that if God wants her to die of hunger, he's going, if God wants her to not die of hunger, he's going to provide her next meal, or maybe he's just going to take her soul away with the angels. I don't know how she thought this would end, but she understood that. And then I guess the last thing I would say that really impressed me about her character is that she's not embarrassed, that though she's in the presence of people around her who are what our present day culture ironically calls successful, that they're wowing each other by their big donations to the temple in Jerusalem. I love that she's still going to give her last dollar, though people might think maybe she has more than that, like maybe she's being stingy. God knows. And it was all about her relationship with God and what is important to him. So she knows that if she obtains his favor, that's like all that matters. So yeah. I love her. It's like a bold thing, because she could have been laughed at. I don't know. I love that.
My husband often, when he's teaching about giving and so on and so forth, he will use this example. Okay. And I've heard him use this idea that he says he pictures in his mind, the box which was the way they had a box for the treasury, and that the rich men go with their bags of coins and drop them, and they clang and make all this noise. And she drops 2 little tiny coins. And that goes back to what you say. She wasn't embarrassed about how it appeared to others.
Yes.
And obviously there was the ability for people to sit and see what you were putting in, because Jesus was doing that. And I like the fact that you bring up that she wasn't embarrassed about that. Yeah.
So I think we've explored some of the principles that we learned from this story, but what would you guys say to build on that? What other principles do we learn in this story about how God views and rewards our actions? Colleen, what are your thoughts on question 2?
Well, she gets a mention in Holy Writ. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
At least that's all we see. And there's no evidence that she got any earthly reward. It's not. We love the plot where she suffers and then she's like with Esther. Everything's great at the end. But this we don't know. Jesus points her out. He doesn't feel any need to say more or explain her poverty or offer bread and fish, as he did in other cases to people. Yeah. This is all he says. She was obviously Jewish. We don't know if she became a Christian later, but we do know this, that for Christians, Jesus taught this in Matthew 19 and verse 29. He said, "And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold and inherit eternal life." We've got to remember that. But many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. So she is definitely last. If you're a woman in Bible times and you are a widow, you're last. So not fun at the time, but just wait.
Yeah, just wait. What would you add to that, Lauren?
Well, to piggyback off of that, I think Jesus hints at some of her condition in the context in Mark 12, especially because in Mark 12 and verse 40, he's talking about the scribes and the Pharisees. And he says they devour widows' houses and say long prayers just for show. These will receive harsher judgment. We don't know that widow's story. We don't know why those 2 coins are the last she has. Yeah. Maybe she's old and she's nearing the end of her life and she should run out. But I think in context, it's reasonable to believe that part of the reason she only has the 2 tiny coins is because she's been treated unfairly. And it is so easy in situations like that for her to drop those coins and then shake her fist at the people in power. I'm here because of you. This is your fault. It's not fair. But she doesn't. She drops her 2 coins and she walks away and she trusts God to finish it. And I think that's one of the big principles that I take from this story is that God sees and God rewards, but he does so in his time and not in mine.
Yes.
And sometimes that looks like me having to suffer unfairly. Sometimes that looks like me having to withstand evil in this world without a reward. But God sees and God rewards, and he's the important one anyway. And this story reminds me to keep doing what I need to do, even if it's a position that's not fair for me to be in.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And yeah, such a reminder that don't look on the fruit around you of your efforts because you're waiting for your reward. That you're not always going to see the fruit of your efforts, and just that's what faith is, right? You just keep going. You keep putting one foot in front of the other, doing the next right thing and the next right thing, despite that you're not necessarily seeing that God is watching and I'm going to get this great reward for, I'm going to be in the sacred text, as Colleen pointed out, that God is you got to trust. God says that he sees all and that he will reward those who diligently seek him. And so great act of faith. What would you add to this, Dana?
Not a lot. I do think about over in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and then in chapter 9 where Paul's talking about the Macedonians and the way that they gave. And I love how he says that they first gave themselves to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when they did that, they were willing to sacrifice, because we're told in a few verses earlier that they gave beyond their means, which is what this widow did. She gave beyond what she could afford to give because she gave everything. The brethren in Macedonia were not wealthy people, and they gave, it says, out of their poverty to the needs of others. And it was because they first gave themselves to the Lord. And I think that's a principle. When we give ourselves to the Lord, then we can step up like this widow and trust God. And later in chapter 9, he continues talking about these same people. And he makes the point that God is able to give us, able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. That applies. That's what we're talking. That's the kind of giver she was. She trusted the Lord, as Lauren said, as we've all talked about. She trusted the Lord. She was willing to sacrifice, knowing that her God was well able to take care of her. And that's where we all need to realize God has total means of taking care of any need I have. It's nothing for him to take care of me.
Yeah. And you think about how much more we have than even the richest person had in the first century, when you factor in, all the medical advances and transportation advances and just all the inventions that have made life more comfortable. It's just kind of like one of those how much more situations. We were also wanting to talk about what can we learn from the fact that heaven had taken such note of what she had done, and yet, as far as we can tell, she never knew it. I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit. I'll offer a few thoughts here, and if anyone has anything else to add to this, do let me know. I was thinking about how often there is no clue or sign that God has just said, wow, look at you. And 100%, because 100% of our reward is sometimes for a certain act is always going to be in heaven. So I think, to me, what I take away from that is keep doing the right thing, even when it seems you're getting nothing out of it. And I hope this won't be too controversial, but I love that the churches of Christ, at least the ones that I'm in touch with, don't have like service award banquets. yay, you, like, here's your, like, I just kind of wonder when you get this attention for, like, you're doing this good deed, and now we're going to have you come up and we're going to clap for you, and you're going to get your, I don't know what you get. And, you know, so I don't know that, I don't know. It just kind of taints it in view of, I think, this beautiful, beautiful story. So I'm just grateful for the not having the awards banquet. A lot of meaningful acts of faith go unseen by people around us, and it's between us and God. And when we choose honesty, or like, because those often it'll be like nobody ever knows, but you like you could have just made a killing and taken advantage of a situation, but you're going to be honest, and you know, with some kind of transaction. Sometimes it's forgiving someone, like these private acts of like somebody out, maybe the person who did the most damage to your life of anyone else. And when you're willing to forgive someone who has repented, or at least let them, you know, they're still going to be accountable to God, but just not giving them that space in your heart anymore where they're going to take even more from you than what they've already taken. So
I like the way you put that.
Okay. Forgiving them to the extent that you can biblically forgive them, and then just having some peace over giving that to God. When you pray in secret for your enemies, nobody knows that but God. So I think there's something beautiful about hidden obedience and faithfulness. Colleen, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I think that is a great point, that she didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't even probably know that Jesus was watching her. But she had to see how much the other people were putting in.
Yes.
And if it were me, I would definitely notice that. And I could possibly be discouraged. Just think of things, you know, things we do every day in our everyday lives. And it seems like my little pittance is not really going to make a difference. We might think it's futile what I'm doing. I'm putting my last money in here. And then what good is it going to do? Well, think of efforts to glorify God. You know, some people do an admirable job of teaching their children, and then the children never become Christians, or they're unfaithful Christians. And think of all the invitations to services or to have a personal Bible study that don't seem to bear any fruit. Well, Jesus said in Matthew 6:19-20, Jesus commanded, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal." We are so fortunate to get this little behind the scenes truth. You know, otherwise it would appear, like Cindy said, the good works we do just fall flat. In reality, every good work defies gravity and makes its way not to some database, but to heaven, no matter what the perceived outcome here. So we can rest in that and just keep charging on.
Yes. Well, your words are reminding me of the verse, and maybe one of you knows where the text of this verse is, but my word never returns unto me void. So every word you speak that is truth from the mouth of God that you're sharing with your children or anyone else, whether they respond or not, there's a reward there. Yeah. You look at the record of Noah, how long he preached, and to how many people, and he's called faithful. And we see that over and over and over again, that God judges success so differently than we do.
That's the truth.
Yes, you have to remember that.
Yes. Lauren, anything to add here?
I think prayer has to be a part of this too. Just last week, I have a son who turned 14 last weekend. He looks like a 20-year-old, but he's only 14. And I spent Thursday with two different friends at different points in the day. And he just was weighing really heavily on my heart that day. My son was. And I was talking to my friends and I was going, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if I'm doing enough. I don't know. And I'm doing it by myself now. And I don't know. And I just poured myself out to my friends. But then we also took that and poured it out to God. And we prayed and said, give me a hint here. I feel like I'm floundering. Give me like a light from heaven, something. Give me something here to help me know if I'm on the right path. Am I doing it right? Am I doing enough? And the next day, my son goes out for a walk first thing in the morning, as he does. And he came home and he said, "Hey, Mom, do you have a minute? I want to be baptized."
Oh.
And I said, "Okay, thanks."
There it is.
There it is. That God wants us to be okay. And if we feel like that widow, because I think we all have widow moments sometimes, right? Where I feel like I'm putting in what I feel like I have, but it feels like it's not enough. And I don't know if I'm doing it right. And God wants us to be assured in our work and in our faith. And if we take that to him, his word is faithful. I've been old, I've been young, and now I'm old, and I've not seen the saints forsaken nor the righteous begging bread.
Yes.
When we need him, he will come through for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always look like what we've been praying for magically happens the next day, because he's not Santa Claus, but he wants us to bring that to him and to let him reassure us when we feel unsure.
Widows Mite moments. I think that one's sticky enough to stick in my old head, Lauren, looking for those Widows Mite moments. Yes, and they're not what we think they're going to be always, but wow. I could tell where you were going, because I've been watching your Facebook page, and I'm like, oh, don't make me cry. Yes. I don't have any Kleenex right now, but so beautiful. So beautiful.
That I think, you said you're like, I need a foothold here. I give me a hint. And I think prayer, that should be where we go. But also, when God gives us work to do, it manifests, the experience manifests itself, and then we know. So a lot of the things he's telling us to do, when you turn around after doing it for a while, it's like you do know. And you're better at it, like anything we do. But especially, when people shrink from tasks God gives them, they're not getting the experience that he means for us to have, that will help us to understand, oh, yeah, this is the right way. I've seen this before. This is good. Yeah. So that's another thing. Be a good worker. Be doing what he says to do, because that's going to develop you.
Totally. And I think a great way to keep that in mind on a practical level, Colleen, is when you first wake up in the morning, ask God, who would you have me meet, and what would you have me do to glorify you in this day? And then watch out for it, because,
he might,
Lord has just brought out,
might get what you ask for.
You are going to get what you ask for. And it is so faith building to watch it unfold. Dana, what have you been thinking on this?
Well, the verse you were wanting about where my work, that's in Isaiah 55:11.
Thank you.
Just so we got that on record. I think about Hagar in the wilderness, and you remember she left because she was being treated so badly, which we've kind of talked about. The widow, don't know what circumstances were, but Hagar was, in our minds, very justified in running away. And yet, what did God do? He sent her back to a bad situation.
Yes.
And told her, you just hang in there. I'm going to bless you. And he gave her a prophecy of what her son would grow up to be, and even the difficulties that her son would face, and so on and so forth. But I love how Hagar, I have mixed feelings about Hagar, because I think Sarah is an incredible woman. And yet Hagar was not treated well by Sarah, and it doesn't seem she was ever treated well by Sarah. And I think I often want to put Hagar in this category and Sarah in this category. So Hagar's the bad one and Sarah's the good one. But Hagar says at the end of this discussion with God, she says, then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees. For she said, have I also here seen him who sees me? Hagar had this faith in God. She had this dependence on God. And she did what God said. She went back to a bad situation that didn't appear to get any better for her, only to cast out again and sent away. But she recognized God sees me. God, it's kind of like Lauren was like, what's going on here? I need a sign. And God gives you one. You see God in that moment. Well, what does it do for you for the next time? It gives you the faith to endure the next trial, to endure the next dark day, the next difficult time.
Yes.
I know that God saw me back then.
Yeah.
And why is he going to quit seeing me now? And that, you know, I talk to myself a lot. Y'all may not. I talk a lot. And I'm always reasoning with myself. And when I'm questioning, Lord, don't you know what's going on? This is difficult situations, you know, then I just sit and talk to myself about, well, you know, when I was 20, he did this for me. And when I was 30, he did this for me. You remember that thing when you were 44 and how that happened and how that turned out and how it happened when you were 50 and now you're 65, now you're 68. Why is he going to quit helping me today when he's helped me for 68 years?
Yes.
There's
what
no
a track record.
And it just builds that faith. And I think that's what Hagar saw. She said, I see you now. You see me, and I see the God who sees. And that's what we need to grab hold of. God sees us. He saw this widow, though she doesn't necessarily know it. Hagar realized it. Hagar had a visitation from an angel, and she saw it firsthand, and she knew that she was being seen. But this widow may not have known it, yet she had the faith to walk on in that. And I think every time, if we're looking, I think it was Colleen that said, look for these signs. If we're looking for the ways God's working in our lives, then I'll recognize that's the hand of God, and it gives me faith to move on and know even tomorrow when I don't see him working, I can trust that he is. Okay, I'm through.
Yes, and if we pray that prayer, Lord, who would you have me to help? What would you have me to do to your glory today? Sometimes it's a really hard thing like Hagar, right? Sometimes it's this blissful moment like Lord, what happened with Lauren, like, oh, show me I need some feedback here. But sometimes it's like, okay, here's a cross, you know. So, and that too is a blessing. It's hard for us in our humanity to be like, thank you, equal thank yous on those. But yeah, there's such a wide variety of what that can look like. But yes, I love the weaving in of Hagar into this conversation for sure, Dana. So what other inspiring stories have you witnessed, let's say, of the people that you've seen risk everything to honor God? Lauren, you want to start us off on this final question?
I would love to.
Okay.
I would love to introduce y'all to my friend Norma. Norma went home to be with Jesus a few weeks ago. Wow. I met Norma in 2006, so a minute ago. And she was a widow at that time and had been for quite a while at that point. So she lived much of her life as a widow, and she did not have an easy life. She had one daughter who survived and countless miscarriages before and after. And she grew up and married a man who did not love the Lord and who did not love her as he should.
Ouch.
And she found the Lord. And one day she was walking out. She got ready to go to worship like she did every Sunday. And he was sitting in the chair cleaning his shotgun. And he said, you walk out that door and you better not come back. Wow. And she said, you do what you will. I'm going to go to church. Wow. And as she walked out the door, she heard a shot, and the wall next to her splintered with shrapnel. He had shot next to her to scare her. She kept walking. She went to church. She came home, and he never mentioned it again.
This weird ending of that story.
Just And so it's easy to look at Norma and say the difficult thing that she did for God was she kept going to church in the face of her husband's disapproval. But I think there's more to her story, because I think the difficult thing that Norma did for God was she stayed with him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Talk about a
that
cross.
would be really difficult.
Yeah.
To stay with a husband who had shot at me because I was walking out the door. She didn't try to make him go with her. She was just minding her business, going to church.
Yes.
And yet she loved him and submitted to him as a wife should, up to the point where he demanded that she disobey God.
Wow.
And I think it's easy to look at vignettes like that and say, oh, what a difficult thing. But I think the really difficult thing that Norma did was day in and day out.
Oh, yeah.
She lived in a difficult situation and chose to honor God in that difficult situation.
It's so humbling.
She's one of my heroes. And she was so gentle and loving all of her life to everyone she met, and was faithful to God to the end.
Wow,
and now
what
it's
an
gone to her
inspiration.
reward.
Wow, what an inspiration. Faithful unto death.
Did she stay with him for were they together a long time?
Until he passed away. Yeah.
And then how much longer did she live?
And she lived at least 30 or 40 years after his death.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So he died younger than average, but not super duper young.
When I hear a story like that, it's so humbling, because it's like when you hear about people that are capable of more than what you're capable of, because I know, wow, that is some strength. I can't imagine living with someone like that long and being faithful. Colleen, who is your inspiration for this answer for question number 4?
Well, the one that comes to mind that makes a good story. Now, I think what Lauren was saying is exactly right. It's that every day there are people plotting, and they don't necessarily make the greatest story. This one does. Ollie Abernathy. This story was related to me by her son. But she lived in Capshaw, Alabama, and was born in the I guess the 20s. And by the 1940s, she had 2 little children and a baby. And they were poor, and she didn't have any way to get to church. Her husband was not a Christian at the time. So she got herself and the 3 little ones to church. They lived about 3 miles from the church building. There was a man that would come by, and they could ride in the back of his old pickup truck. And her daughter later said that she remembered riding in that truck, and that sometimes the tarp, if it rained, they had a tarp they got under to stay dry. But there was another big reason that they were under this tarp. A relative of her husband had told her that if he ever saw her riding to church, that he would shoot her. And no joke, shoot her. And remember, this is the 1940s, just after the Depression. And so she and the kids hid under that tarp on the way to church and they were going to get there. You know, just the rain might stop many of us, let alone gunfire.
Exactly. Wow. Are we going to be 3/4? Is there going to be a gun involved in your story, Dana Bird?
Well,
come on, Dana, you can do it.
Well, I don't know that there was a gun. There was a preacher and his wife that we knew who passed away just a few years ago. They lived in Alabama, but they were a number of years older than we are, and we met them when we were in our early 30s and knew them until their death. But they had done a lot of difficult teaching and preaching in the mountains of Tennessee, rural Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia, in that kind of square area, Four Corners area there. And this would have been back in the probably 40s and 50s that they did this work, and they had a radio program. There was another preacher that was working with them. And they had, the two men had a radio program, and they were threatened many, many times. Their house was burned.
Wow.
Kids in the house,
Wow.
and they got out and escaped. But they were threatened if they kept preaching, they would die.
Wow.
Their family would die, and they kept preaching. And they risked literally everything, including their lives, to preach the gospel. You know, we don't think about that today, but that still goes on in other parts of the world. And we're very fortunate that we don't have it so much in our country, though I think it's probably coming back. But needless to say, I had great admiration for them, and they were nobodies. And I don't mean that, but I'm saying in the brotherhood, nobody knew who they were.
Right.
I can tell you their names, and you wouldn't know them, I doubt. But they are very special people. They were very special people, very humble, nothing dynamic, but just loved God.
Yes.
And if you go now, I will take this back. If you go up in that area today, they know who preacher so-and-so is.
Yes.
And all you have to do is say, do you know preacher so-and-so? And oh, yes. And there's another story that goes with that I won't burden you with. But one time, it was funny because they're a very clannish, closed society. They still are today. And I had been told the women will not speak to you, and you'll be lucky if a man will speak to you. At a meeting we were going to, and not one person spoke to me. And I went up to whom I knew was the preacher's wife. She was with several other women. And I went up and said, "Are you sister so-and-so?" And she never looked up, and she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, preacher so-and-so and his wife so-and-so said to say hello." And it was like, oh, now I was the most wonderful person.
Your calling card.
I knew preacher so-and-so.
Yes.
And, you know, we don't have to be anybody special. We just have to do the Lord's work.
Yeah.
We're willing to do it at whatever cost. And these brethren remembered 20, 30, 40 years later, the cost that they had done to save their souls.
Yes.
Yeah.
They remember how he made them feel by what
and
all
they
the truth that we taught.
Risk to bring
the great risk.
Yeah.
How inspiring. How inspiring. Mine are kind of more along the lines of a social risk and maybe a financial risk, but I'm very impressed with this brave young single man in Nebraska that I wrote about in my book, 100 Churches, who goes on social media in Reddit into groups that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and he shares material that he knows will cause many of those who hate God and despise truth to verbally attack him. And he's cool with that. He's fine with that. And so his goal is to look through the hundreds of comments and then find the one where somebody says, you know, you make a good point that, you know, God, you know, and so, oh, here's a good heart. And then he can go and have a private conversation, like a Bible study, with the good and honest hearts in between all the haters. And he just does this over and over and over again so that he can steer their eternal souls nearer to the Creator and rescue them from godless. I just love, and he was like in his early 20s. I just love how objective he is about that process. Like, you know, he knows who he is, and he cares about what God thinks 100%, and is just so bold. He just reminds me of a Joseph, like in the Bible. The other one I'll quickly mention in passing is that I'll never forget a brave young preacher who, though his wife was almost full-term in a very high-risk pregnancy, like there was a good chance that this pregnancy, they weren't sure if she was going to live or not. They've already got a number of very young children to feed as well. But even still, as he's studying an important controversial topic that the leadership in his congregation was taking an unbiblical stance on, but he keeps reading more of the Bible, and he's like, this is not what I'm, and he has sleep. He told me he had sleepless nights, like his conscience, like, what am I going to do here? And he told the leadership, you know, he just came forward to them and said, you know, here's the biblical stance on this teaching. Here's what Jesus says on it. And so he informed them of that. And he said, you know what, if I can't just go along, and if you need to fire me, then you do what you think you need to do. But you need to know this is what the truth is on the topic and what I will be preaching on the topic. So he was ready, like they could fire him on the spot. And so the risk of, you know, how am I going to feed these kids and get my wife? So it turned out okay. She survived. The baby was healthy, and everybody came through it. And he has since moved to a congregation that preaches the whole counsel of God. And so that was so amazing to me. So amazing to me that his faith in being bold for what he could see in black and white was the truth. So that is what I have. Does anyone have anything that was in your notes that you must say before I say goodnight to our faithful viewers?
Well, on this topic, there's a book called J.D. Tant, Texas Preacher.
I was fixing to say, you need to read that book. Yeah.
Oh, that is, I remember I told my daughter about it, and she was like, she came back and she said, I couldn't put it down. Yeah. It's one of those you're reading and you're like, it's 2 a.m. and your hand's frozen, and you know, you can't just, you've been sitting there still reading this thing.
Is that right?
And then his wife also wrote her version. So I think it's called, her name was Nanny Yater Tant, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember
that. Really, those books, they're worth reading. Those people, I'm telling you, if you talk about putting your life on the line and everything, and your wealth on the line, they did it. So that's
amazing.
And I think the thing about, I'm sorry, I think the thing about Nanny Yater Tant is the sacrifices she made while he was gone all the time.
Oh, yes.
And just phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I was going to jump in and say that you need to read this book called The Texas Preacher. Yeah. J.D. Tant. So yeah.
It's really cool because I believe his son wrote it. So see, if the preacher had written it, he would have been kinder, I think. And so you get the whole story from the son.
Good and the bad.
That's just my take on it, but see what you think.
All right. Well, I appreciate that recommendation along the same lines of being bold for your faith, like this widow who gave the last that she had. So I think our conversation will be an encouragement to our listeners who are aiming for sacrificial faithfulness and refraining from comparing their sacrifices to others, right? We need to keep our eyes on our own race, sisters, and may we take comfort that God only looks at our hearts and how well we are using what we have to love those around us. Thank you for loving those around us tonight, ladies, and sacrificing this time to share your very wise, again, I always learn things from you guys. Great panelists. So thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thank you for your contributions tonight, and good night, viewers.
Good night.
Bye.